of power each section and tell me until which power we have teached. Okay, I think I must start from here. Number 16. I think number 16. Chapter 2. All of the students that hear my sound, you must all have the PDF of book right now. Do you have it? So you can see the texts in your books and you can come with the class. Okay. Yes, thank you, Miss Adnan. Today the past section was about quantitative and qualitative research, and today we are going to study this chapter 2. The chapter 2 the research process and creative plans. So today we are going to study about chapter the research process at quick glance. In this chapter you will learn about the 8-step model for carrying out research. And I want to tell you that we are going to study these processes, these steps, and then we can read each separately in each chapter, okay? Now, first of all, we are going to read about these steps. So, the 8-step model for carrying out research. Now we are going to study us deciding what to research. Step 1, formulating a research problem. Phase 2, planning a research study. So please note that in this chapter you are going just to read about deciding what to research. Phase 2, planning a research study. That this phase has 4 steps. Step 2, conceptualizing a research design. Step 3, constructing an instrument for data collection. Step 4, selecting a sample. selecting file, writing a research proposal. You can see the 4 steps of planning a research. First of all, we must design the title, the research, and then we must find the instruments for data collection, construction. So, and the instrument for data collection is the second step. Then we must sampling, and then we must writing a research proposal. Then we are going to talk about all of these steps in the future, okay? In the next chapters, we are going to talk about the phase 3, conducting a research study. So we can see 3 steps here: collecting data. So step 6, collecting data. Step 7, processing and displaying data. Step 7, writing, 8, writing a research report. So after the writing research proposal, we must collecting data, then processing and displaying them, and then writing a research report at the final step. Okay, so here in this slide you saw 8 steps: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 steps of a research process. And then you can see in this power the research process in this page for your book. You can see the research process, okay? Phase 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And the main task you can see here: the research journey, touch each post and select methods and procedures appropriate for your journey. The main task: deciding what. So in deciding phase, deciding, in the step deciding, we must to study about what we are going to study. What we are going to study. Research questions to answer. What we are going to study. And in the phase 2, in the planning steps, we are going to study about how we must do this research. So in deciding we have what, and in planning we have how to gather evidence to answer the research questions. So that this step is very, very important for the instruments, the way of research, the data, and we are going to plan that how we can do the research. So to gather evidence, to answer the research questions, and to how for research, we must do some studies about the use of useful and appropriate instruments. And the phase 3, undertaking, so that means the collection of information, the required information. So in the final steps, we must collecting the data for our research. And you can see the operational steps research journey here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is in the last phase. So the first step in phase 1, the step 2, 3, 4, 5 in phase 2, and 6, 7, 8 in phase 3. Yes, unfortunately, um, we have the problem for the sound in the morning, in the beginning of morning, okay? I don't know why this cutting off is for this done system, I don't know, or maybe for internet. I think it's for internet using in the beginning hours of the morning, but I'm going to exit from the class and then enter another time. I think the sound will be better, okay? So in 2 or 3 minutes you don't have my voice because I'm going to exit the class and then enter another time, okay? I hope with doing this the sound will be better. I don't know, maybe. Okay, so I exit from the class and I search another time for getting better the sound I remove. I hope it. We are going to study the phase 1, deciding what to research. As you remember, the phase 1 was deciding what to research. So step 1 in this phase is formulating the research problem. Formulating the research problem is the first and most important step in the research process. So formulating is the most important step in the research processes. A research problem identifies your destination. It should tell you your research supervisor and your readers what you intend to research. So designing and formulating a research problem is the most important step in the research. The more specific and clear you are, the better, as everything that follows in the research process: study design, measurement procedures, sampling strategy, frame of analysis, and the style of writing of your dissertation or report is greatly influenced by the way in which you formulate your research problem. Hence, you should examine it truly, carefully, and scientifically. So you can see that all of these steps are important, but the designating and the way that we can formulate, and we must formulate the research problem, is the most important stage for designing study and for frame of analysis and sampling strategy are contained in this process, in this step. The main function of formulating a research problem is to decide what you want to find out about. I change the color to purple to emphasize to this step and to this sentence. The main function of formulating a research problem is to decide what you want to find out, and that is very, very important, because you must know that what you want to find out. And if you know all of it, so you can understanding that very good. Okay, so in phase 1 only we have one step that shows what what we want to study, and in phase 2, planning the research study, we have this picture for you, and you can see 4 steps here. Okay, we come back to this power. Phase 1, deciding, planning, and undertaking. Phase 2, how, 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, and the phase 3, 3 steps. Okay, 3 steps in phase 3. Now we are going to study the phase 2. Step 2, conceptualizing a research design. An extremely important feature of research is the use of appropriate methods. So that is very important for using, I told you, the appropriate methods, tools, and instruments. Research involves systematic control, valid and rigorous exploration and description of what is not known, and establishment of associations and causation that permit the accurate prediction of outcomes under a given set of conditions. So here you can see um, it's a set of is required for a planning research. For example, systematic research, control research, valid and rigorous exploration, and all of these items are very important for that what is known and what we are going to getting known, okay, what are unknown. So we must set the conditions for this solving the problems. It also involves identifying gaps in knowledge, verification of what is already known, and identification of past errors and limitations. So you can see here the gaps that we have in our study is very important to be known, and we must investigate about errors and limitations too. So identification of past errors and limitations are very important too. In the past, what limitations was there was for the study that we are going to continue, and how we can take it out, how we can uptake the limitations that are important too. The strength of what you find largely resides in how it was defined. The main function of research design is to plan how you will find answers to your research questions. The research design sets out the specific details of your inquiry. So the research designing is very important for the solving problems, for getting the answers of the questions. So the designs are very important and to answer the questions. Sorry, this is I don't know, maybe the sound of my fan on the system. I can't do anymore. Uh, Maybe the sound of the fan on my laptop, I don't know. But I can't do anything more for my sound because um, I have the fastest internet I know I can't, and um, the distance, the internet, and some another items are very important for that. Uh, I'm going to speak louder. I think my sound in the big morning is like this because each class I have in the beginning of the morning we have this problem. We're going to study the next slide. I'm trying to speak louder, okay? Step 3, constructing an instrument for data collection. In step 3, we have 3 steps and we are going to study about them. And constructing an instrument for data collection is in the 2. Anything, so the step 3 is in the phase 2, planning a research. Anything that becomes a means of collecting information to your study is called a research tool or a research instrument. For example, observation forms, interviews, shows, questionnaires, and interview guides. So anything that is needed for collecting information is a research tool or research instrument. That is very important for choosing right of them. Okay, choosing the right and the correct instrument or tool. The construction of a research instrument is the first practical step in carrying out a study. You will need to decide how you are going to collect for the proposed study and then construct a research instrument for data collection. So we must decide how we are going to collect the data for our study. And this how is very important. How we can do that. How we can select the data. How we can um, sorry, how we can collect the correct instruments for our study. So in this step and this practical step, we must choose the research instruments. Okay, I refreshed my page and now we're going to study about step 4, selecting a sample. The accuracy of your finding largely depends upon the way you select your sample. The basic objective of any sampling design is to minimize, within the limitation of cost, the gap between the values obtained from your sample and those prevalent in the study population. So, selecting the sample is the next step, and we must know the limitation of cost. That is very important. The designing, sampling design, and the population that you're going to study, we must select that. The underlying premise in sampling is that a relatively small number of units, if selected in a manner that they genuinely represent the study population, can provide with a sufficiently high degree of probability a fairly true reflection of the sampling population that is being studied. So here you can see the manners, this, the selected manners in represent study of population is very important for true reflection and sampling population that is going to study is very important. So we must minimize the costs and we must investigate about the limitation of the gaps that are um, there in the values for our sampling. So the gaps, the limitations are very important, and the way we are going to select for sampling is very important. How and which method, which instrument, um, how we can sal sampling and screening the populations. Okay, then selecting a sample, you should attempt to achieve two key aims of sampling: the avoidance of bias in the selection of sample and the attainment of maximum precision for a given outlay of resources. So here we can see about selecting samples that contains the two key aims of sampling: the avoidance in the selection of the sample and the attainment of maximum precision. And then we are going to study about step 5. Step 5, writing a research proposal. That all of the students have problems with this stage. we are going to explain each step in a new chapter. Okay? Your book is written. You can see, for example, step 4 in chapter 9, step 5 in chapter 10. For example, in each chapter, we are going to study about the steps. Having done all the preparatory work, the next step is to put everything together in a way that provides adequate information about your research study for your research supervisor and others. So we have done all the preparatory work, and this step is for uh, writing a correct research proposal. Due to the information of our study, we can write a research proposal that you're going to study in the future chapters. This overall plan, called a research proposal, tells the reader about your research problem and how you are planning to investigate. Broadly, a research proposal's main function is to detail the operational plan for obtaining answers to your research questions. So here, the plan is very, very important, and this overall plan is called a research proposal. So the proposal, what is the proposal? The proposal tells about our research problem and how we are going to plan, how we are going to investigate. This will called a proposal. So an operational plan, the operational plan for obtaining answers to our research questions. The operational plan for obtaining answers to research questions are named proposal. In doing so, it ensures and reassures the readers of the validity of the methodology to obtain answers accurately and objectively. Universities and other institutions may have differing requirements regarding the style and content of a research proposal, but the majority of institutions will would require most of what is set out here. So uh, here the organization, the university, the institute is very important for supporting the requirements for our research or our study that are very important. Requirements may also vary within an institution from discipline to discipline or from supervisor to supervisor. And that's all. So the requirements is due to the organization that we are going to cooperate be doing that research. For example, university, for example, I don't know, um, many organizations that you're going to do a research. So planning from one discipline to discipline to another discipline, or one supervisor to another supervisor is very different. And this is very important for the researchers. Okay. If you have any question, you can ask me. I'm just waiting for your questions. Okay, I listen to your question. The time of the lecture is 1 hour and a half. Okay, I will write it here for you. 90 minutes. Okay, about 90 minutes. But every professor, I don't know, usually um, finishing the class 10 minutes sooner, okay? About 80 minutes. But in some of the lectures, it defined it is defined incorrectly, okay? For 2 hours. I talked about that with your head of group, and she said me, you must teach about 90 minutes, 80 to 90 minutes. And the definition is not correct, she told me. It must be for 1 hour and a half, okay? But it is defined for 2 hours, and that is not correct. Okay, did you get it? Okay, so we go to the next hour. In some of the lessons that I have, the time and the period time is defined for 2 hours. I don't know why. Uh, we don't have any class in these titles for 2 hours. The maximum time is for 1 hour and a half, 1 hour and a quarter. But I don't know uh, why they are not going to correct this time. Okay, that's no problem. I will finish after 1 hour and a quarter. Don't worry. Okay. You can leave the class. No problem. The phase 3 is the last phase we are going to study today, conducting a research study. Step 6, collecting data. Selecting data is very important. Having formulated a research problem, developed a study design, constructed a research instrument, and selected a sample, you then collect the data from which you will draw inferences and conclusions for your study. Many methods could be used to gather the required information. So having a design for a research problem, developed study design, or developed research instruments for selecting samples and collecting the data are very important. And then you need to conduct a research study. So many methods could be used to gather the required data. We can collect the data from many ways, many instruments, many samplings, and the design is very important. The sampling or collecting the data. As a part of the research design, you decided upon the procedure you want to adopt to select your data. In this phase, you actually collect the data. For example, depending upon your plans, you might commence interviews, mail out questionnaires, conduct nominal focus group discussions, or make observations. Okay, we are going to this slide another time. You can see here in phase 1, the deciding. Phase 2 was 4 steps. Now we are talking about phase 3, undertaking and the collecting. For example, collecting information, collecting the data. Now we are studying this phase. So undertaking of research. Okay. For example, depending on plans. So the plans are very important. The designs are very important. Maybe we need interviews. Maybe we need questionnaires. Questionnaires are one way for collecting the data in some researchers or studies. Conduct nominal focus group discussions or make observations are another way of collecting data. So please note the way of collecting data is very, very important. And then you can see here the step 7. The way you analyze the information you collected largely depends upon two things: the type of information, descriptive, quantitative, qualitative, or attitude, attitudinal, that we are going to talk about them in the past section, and the way you want to communicate your findings to your readers. Chapter 15 describes different ways of analyzing quantitative and qualitative data, and Chapter 16 details various methods of displaying analyzed data. So, as I told you, in different chapters we are going to study, for example, processing and displaying data. So, step 7 is processing and displaying data. In addition to qualitative and quantitative distinction, it is important for data analysis that you consider whether the data to be analyzed manually or by a computer, and that is very important for the way of collecting data. Sometimes we do that manually, and sometimes we do that with a computer. Use the computer. If you study If your study is purely descriptive, you can write your dissertation report on the basis of your field notes manually, analyze the contents of your notes. So in manually we have some notes, we have some notes that we can analyze them, or use of a computer program, so a nude is N6 or NVivo or Etograph for this purpose. So these are the programs and computers that we can use for the displaying the data. If you want quantitative analysis, it is also necessary to decide upon the type of analysis required. For example, frequency, distribution, cross tabulation, or other statistical procedures such as a regression analysis, factor analysis, and analysis of variance. So in some studies we must do statistical procedures, and for example, analyze the variance and how it should be presented. You will also need to identify the variables to be subjected to these statistical procedures that we are going to study in the future powers. And the last power and the last step 8, writing a research report. There are two broad categories of reports, quantitative and qualitative, that we talked about them. As mentioned earlier, the distinction is more academic than real. So the distinction is more academic than real, as in most studies you need to combine qualitative and quantitative skills. Nevertheless, there are some solely qualitative and solid content. Report is the land for many. Yes, really, this step is the most difficult step. Writing a research report is very important. This report informs the board what you have done, what you have discovered, and what conclusion you have drawn from your findings. If you are clear about the whole process, you will also be clear about the way you want to write your report. Your report should be written in academic style and be divided into different chapters and sections based upon the main themes of your study. Chapter 7 suggests some of the ways of writing research report that you are going to study. So, this chapter is very important. The sections in this chapter are variable. Many sections are there in a research report, and the writing is the most difficult step, but if the way is clear, the way we want to write is clear too. Okay, if you have any question, you can ask me. I'm just waiting for your question. I don't teach anymore. Please write the number of power, number 30, number. Please write the number 30 here. We finished this chapter 2. So we teach until the number 30, and we finished the chapter 2. Okay, thank you. I don't know if another students are present really in the class or just the names are present. Okay, if you don't have any question, I can say goodbye to you until the next week. I hope for you a nice days and a nice week. Take care of yourself. Goodbye.